Oh, it's a roller coaster. It's interesting. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of just trying to figure out what you like and what you don't like, the kind of people you want to hang around with and that you don't want to hang around with, and setting the trajectory that you want to take your life on. I think in your 20s, one thing I really wish I had done, if I could, was figure out what it was that I truly valued, what it was that I really wanted. And it's not just a surface level thing, like people say, I want money, I want a family, I want, like, to actually go, this is the legacy I want to leave behind. That's a really big point to make, because a lot of people, when they think about what it is that they want, it's always very surface level. And one of the things, when I worked with a coach, like, she sat there and just kept asking me, what is it you really want? And I'd be like, oh, I want to make more money and, have a nice house. What do you really want? And the more she kept asking, and I was like, I just want a nice house with a really loving relationship. That's all I want. So I don't care if I don't ever have lots of money. All I want is a really nice relationship, a nice family environment, in a nice kind of clean home. It doesn't have to be that big. And it was, as soon as I got to that point, I was like, oh my God, I know that that's really what I want. Because I could feel it. But when I was saying all the other things, it was just, oh, that'd be nice. That's what I should want. That's what society's told me.
Exactly.
But when you really, really dig deep, and it's very deep within us. Like, some people are very lucky and they know it because what they've been told by their parents or society or their friends to want, they actually do want. But it's the people, I feel, that are told differently, that this is what you should want, when they really want something else, that it's a real struggle for. It's quite easy to see when people are very aligned with their values, because they're at ease. When you're kind of just at ease and you feel, oh, I just feel connected, it's usually when you're doing something that is high on your values list. When you just, I feel alone, or I feel disconnected, or I feel like uneasy, I feel overwhelmed, I feel anxious, it's because you don't really know what you want. When you really know what it is that you want, and you know the actions that you're going to be taking, there's something so calming about that when you hone in on that and you just think about it, it doesn't seem like that much, it doesn't seem that hard anymore. It just seems, oh, that's just, I'm just going to do some things around towards that, and it just comes easier to you because it's actually really what you want. You're not fighting something anymore. A successful person is someone who wakes up every day and is working towards something that they really want. That's all it is. If you want to be a mum and you're waking up and you're taking all your supplements and you're preparing for that motherhood, that's a successful day. You're preparing your body for that process. If you want to be an entrepreneur and you wake up and you spend some of that day reading books on how to become an entrepreneur, that's you progressing towards something that you want. That's a successful day. And every single person, what they want is to have more successful days than unsuccessful days. It's the days where we don't progress and we don't go towards what it is that we want, that we wake up and we don't feel excited about how we're going to spend our day. We're depressed. But the days when we are working towards that, we feel alive, we feel fulfillment and meaning. But a lot of people are very like, here's where I am, here's where the goal is, I won't be happy till I get there. If that's the situation that you're in right now and you're not going to enjoy the journey, 99.9% of your time is going to be on that journey. If you're not happy in that time, that's the wrong goal, or you're going about it the wrong way. One thought that comes up a lot for a lot of people is, I'm not good enough. I would say that's like a thought, and at the base of most of their limits around a situation is that they're not good enough, that they don't deserve that. And when you're able to uncover that as a coach for someone in that situation and know that that's what the thought is, it's very rewarding to start helping them point out why they are or how they can be, and then start to like break down, because like any kind of limiting belief or thought like that, it's like a block. It's like you're trying to get to here and there's this big wall, and that's what it is. And so you can try and do things but to go around it, but until you kind of face it, you won't get past it. And it's really interesting. It's like, for instance, a very good example is when someone wants to lose weight. And I find it fascinating because so many people are like, okay, I'm 60 kilos and I want to be 50 kilos. They'll sit there and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'll work on this and I'll get a diet, and they go absolutely crazy for like 6 weeks and they just like absolutely kill it. But the problem is they haven't actually changed anything mentally about themselves. And it's kind of like I don't know if you've ever heard of psycho-cybernetics. It's like a thing where we all have like a thermostat, like a self-image in our mind of who we are and who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to get. And even though these people lose weight, they do it at the time, but in their mind they haven't changed the image of themselves. It's all forced behavior. And after that 6-week period ends, slowly but surely they put on the weight and they go back up to 60 because they didn't change the image in their head. I remember after high school I had this mate who, he was like 20 kilos overweight. And after high school, 6 months after that, he lost it all. And about 4 years later, I was sitting there, I'm like, dude, it's like, I don't understand why you're not more confident. It's like, you know, you look amazing, you're a really confident guy, you're really nice and all that. And he just sat there and he was like, had tears in his eyes. He was like, David, he goes, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm still that little fat kid up in here. He's like, and that won't ever change. And then like 2 years later, he put all the weight back on. He couldn't see anything other than that. He's like, all of this is forced. He's like, it's not me. That's the image that he held of himself. And you can't outrun that image, unfortunately. So there has to be like some belief work or some changing of that thought pattern around who it is that you truly believe yourself to be. So for instance, it happens with money as well. People go, I want to earn more money. And it's like, they can be like a salesman and, you know, let's say they're selling like $1 million of insurance or something a year. Because they might have a month where they go up to like 150,000. So they're going to overshoot it. But then the next month, they'll actually only sell like 70. Because it doesn't, like, they just have that image in their mind of what it is that their goal, where they're gonna end up, and they just keep, no matter what they do, they'll bounce backwards and forwards, but until they change that image of themselves to be, I'm a successful salesman who sells 2 million. Until they have that image in their mind, they just won't, they can go back and forth, it just won't happen. I remember the first goal I achieved, I sat down and wrote it on a piece of paper. It was, I wanted to be earning $80,000 in a job that I liked. And I achieved it like 4 months later, and I didn't even realize I'd achieved it. I literally looked back like a month and a half later and I was like, oh, hang on, crap. I was like writing on a piece of paper. I was like, hang on, how much am I earning now after that last pay rise? When did I get that? I was sitting there, I'm like, holy crap, I've actually already achieved this. But I had no idea. It wasn't like a big moment where I was like, celebrate. It was like, and well, okay, what do I do now? Like, I was like, you know, am I supposed to just sit here and just like party and then just be like celebrate? I was like, okay, where now? So many people are fixated on there. It's like, once you get there, then suddenly you got to go somewhere else. One of the things that happened like around money was like there was a law of compensation. I heard it was, you know, the amount of money that you'll make will be in relation to the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. So I just focused on my ability. I'm like, and then I started thinking about the job I was in. And I thought, how can I help more people in this area? And at the time it was like in a factory, and I started realizing like, how can I help my boss out? I realized that he needed me to do certain things like get there a little bit earlier and prepare so that he didn't have to come in on time, or that he didn't have to work back late. So sometimes he'd say, I've got to do this. I'm like, it's all right, you can go home to your family, I'll do it. And he was, oh my God, thank God Dave's here. So suddenly I became more important. I became more difficult to replace, because suddenly it's like, oh my God, this guy's saving me 20 minutes a day, or half an hour, or an hour, or 2 hours a day, because he's just coming in. And I was sitting there, I was actually writing. I was like, for my bosses, I was like thinking, how can I make their lives easier? And I was like solving that problem. I was like, okay, if I do this, then that makes that easier. If I do that, that makes that easier. And within like 2 weeks of me doing that, I got a pay rise. 2
weeks?
Yeah, it was the work that I was doing was very, you know, when they felt like there was value added, you got a pay rise. And I was like, wow. You know, it's this concept of just leave people with the impression of increase. And it involves you focusing on other people other than yourself. So a lot of the time when people want to get something, they focus on, how can I get this? And unfortunately, a lot of the time you have to give to get. So a lot of people are basically saying, all right, once you put the wood, to the fireplace, give me the heat and I'll give you the wood. And it's like, no, you put the wood in, then you get the heat. So that's where people go wrong. When my boss pays me more, I'll work harder. When the opportunity is there, I'll learn that. And it's not the right way of thinking, because there's a law of like cause and effect. So I was just thinking, okay, I'm just going to add more value. I added more value, I became more valuable. We're all responsible for our own emotions. So if you start saying, if I don't do this, then they're going to feel bad. suddenly what's happening is you're actually doing stuff to try and make them feel better, and you're taking away their responsibility to themselves to make themselves better. So, for instance, you know, when you're a parent, you could be sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, you know, if I do this, then my kid will feel better. Or if you're a kid and then it's like, oh, if I do that, then my parent will feel better. And suddenly what's happening is you're basing your actions on doing something to make someone else happier when it's their own responsibility to do that. So we can be responsible to people for certain reasons. Like, well, I'm responsible to turn up for work. I'm responsible to do my job. But a lot of the time I'm not responsible for if the company does well. I'm not responsible for how the boss feels. Now I can come into work and do the extra work or think about that, but if he feels bad or he's having a bad time, I'm not responsible for his emotions. And a lot of people try and take responsibility for other people's emotions, and that's where they get into that giving too much state. Like, oh, I've got to go see my mum a lot because otherwise she'll feel that I don't love her. It's like, well, she doesn't feel loved. That's her opportunity to go do something, to give something, to feel loved or feel meaning. And a lot of us try and take the responsibility of someone else's emotion.
And it applies to relationships.
Definitely. It's, you know, if you are in a situation where, oh, if I don't send them a text at lunchtime, they won't feel loved. If they don't feel loved because you don't send them a text message, there's something going on for them. They need to work on their own self-love. And, you know, there's healthy levels of responsibility and there's unhealthy. Like, you're responsible to your partner to show up when you say you will. You're responsible to your partner to not cheat on them. You're responsible to your partner for, you know, being financially responsible. But if within those situations, if you don't write to them and they suddenly think that you're cheating on them, that's not your responsibility. If you just go out late at night and come home a little bit late and then they go, oh, where were you, and all this, and they've created this emotion themselves, you're not responsible for that. And unless you said that you will be back at that time but you need to allow there to be some responsibility for your partner to have responsibility over their own emotions.
How do you balance that? Because when you're in an intimate relationship, for example, of course you care for the person and you would like to see them happy, and, you know, like it's a very slippery slope, you know, like it's very easy to go down because
the number one thing, if you're in that kind of situation, is to start by responding and not reacting. So there's a massive difference between, like, if, you know, you're in a partnership and you go, you came home late and that made me feel like you were, you know, disrespecting me. Rather than go, well, you know, turning around and going, well, you know, I'm allowed to do what I want. Responding is where you think about it. It's like, well, I've gone out and they're upset about this. Like, okay, I'm gonna respond. So why is it that if I go out, you don't feel this way, that you feel that way? And it's like, well, you know, because of this. Like, but why do you feel that way if that happens? And actually calming and not reacting to the situation. That is a big part, and that's a lot of fights with couples tend to just go from that. There's like a little thing and they both just bite at each other and it goes. But if you are able to actually stop and think, go, why is this person thinking this? And not make it about you. Because if your partner yells at you and you haven't done anything, it's not about you. If you start going, oh, well, you've done this, and attacking them, then it becomes a fight. But if you go, what could have happened today for my partner to have felt really like, she had a job interview today, it didn't go well. You know what I mean? So you have that.
Like the clues.
Yeah. So a lot of it is not about you, it's about the other person. And being able to see that suddenly allows you to think like the other person and see where they're possibly coming from, and possibly see what story it is that they've made up and see if you have any responsibility over that. But at the same time, if your partner's constantly yelling at you for things that aren't your fault, then that's probably a sign that there needs to be another conversation had. Because you can't always want to be not always want to be the person who diffuses the situation. What I learned through all the intimate relationships were people don't really change that much. So if you're constantly trying to tell like a story about, well, at their base like levels of their values, you can't get someone who is very family orientated to not want to spend time with their family. You can't get someone who's not very career driven and like ambitious, to suddenly become like someone who wants to earn millions of dollars if they're happy with if that's part of their value system. that was something I learned, that people will have solid values, and they'll show you that by the way that they spend their time and how they spend their money. And I don't think I learned from that experience.
That's so interesting, because at the same time you're a life coach.
Yeah.
And you need to believe strongly that people can change. People can change when they want to, but they can't. They don't want to be changed by other people. Okay. So in a relationship, it's people are not afraid of change. They're afraid of being changed. Like when it's our choice, we do want to change, and if we can better ourselves. But when it's not our choice, when we're being forced into it, there's resentment. Especially if we have to grow and go through a lot of uncomfortableness. Like I went into a lot of relationships, and it's so simple, but I'd be like, when all I have to do is make them want to value hanging out with me more than their friends. It doesn't happen. It's like, all I have to do is make it so that, they want to spend more time with me than their family. All I have to do is convince them that traveling the world is a really good idea, and they'll do it. You know what I mean? It's like that people are either excited about an idea and want to pursue it, and you can show people and you can get them to do things, but even if they really enjoy it, most likely if they've been forced into it, they won't want to. I got one of my partners in my late 20s, she got me to go overseas on a cruise to Vanuatu. Fantastic time. I fought it the entire time. I was just sitting there, I was not happy to be there for most of it. And then after we broke up, then a year later I went to Spain by myself. And I told her I never wanted to travel, I didn't value it, I didn't find it important. But then when it was my choice, I wanted to do it. And that was a big learning curve, I would say, with intimate relationships, is really listen to what the person's saying. Especially in your 20s, telling them what's valuable to you and knowing what you really value. So if you know you value your friends and family, if they come in and they're someone who doesn't value that, and they're constantly trying to pull you away from what it is that you value, that relationship won't generally go very far. So when two people know what it is that they highly value, and they can come and say, yeah, I value that as well, then you can kind of grow and become better people. But if you're constantly trying to pull each other away from what it is that you find is important to you, there's going to be resentment that builds up. Working out what it is that you have a desire to do, to build, to change, to grow, to develop into. And that was something that I don't feel that I did as much, and I wish I'd done it, because I've learned a lot of bad habits in that period of time that now I have to unlearn. People, and this is one thing I will say for people in their 20s, even if you're not doing anything, you're doing something. If you're drinking, you're learning the habit of drinking. If you're partying and traveling, you're learning the habit of partying and traveling. You're learning how to get good at that. Your mind is always trying to become efficient at whatever it's doing. If you're on Facebook a lot, guess what? You're getting efficient at Facebook. And it's really hard once the brain learns how to be efficient at something to learn how to be inefficient, or to relearn something else. So everything that you're doing at the moment, you may think, oh yes, I can just start again. You're actually building habits that set it up so it's harder for you to do what it is that you want later. Because you're reinforcing.
Yeah, it's reinforced, and it's the people who are successful in the world, and I've heard it so many times, it's like the people who can learn, unlearn and relearn. And it's very, very true. And I think the longer that you do stuff, the harder it is to unlearn it. Like I smoked for 12 years. It took me a year and a half of concentrating on how to quit smoking to quit smoking. And I kept thinking the whole time, I can just stop whenever I want, I can stop whenever I want. And a lot of my friends were doing the same thing, saying that, and a lot of them really struggle with it. And it's not until I had to try a whole bunch of things, even as a coach. I had to try a whole bunch of things, so it was a while before I was able to actually make that stick as well, which was surprising. I thought, because I knew all this stuff about the mind, I'd be able to do it, and it was actually really quite difficult because I'd put it into so many different situations and so many different relationships and so many different emotional states of it being my go-to, that it was just so engulfed into everything. It was so embedded. It's really, really difficult to get it out.
So what worked in the end?
So in the end, I signed a piece of paper with the guys at work that was, if I had a smoke in the next 2 weeks, I had to give each of them $100. So that would have cost me $700 if I'd had a smoke. And then I kept thinking, what was the first? A lot of smoking, it's so many different places and so many different triggers that I had to start really thinking about, okay, when are the first, like the specific times that I'm having one where I can try and change it? Because I need to build the belief that I can avoid it. So the first one was when I got to work, I'd turn right out of the lunchroom and sit down and have one. So I just had this thing, all right, when I come out of the lunchroom, I turn left. When I come out of the lunchroom, I turn left. And that was what I just kept saying. When I come out of the lunchroom, I turn left. And I'd come out and I'd turn left and go over and clock on. I'm like, okay, that's one down. And through being able to do one simple step, and then I eventually, signed that piece of paper with the guys at work. It just like, suddenly it's like, oh, hang on, I can avoid that one. And it was just like, whenever I come out of the lunchroom, I turn left. And
it starts with that one single one.
It starts with that one single step. People with smoking or something that's really embedded into you, there's so many different triggers you're going to feel. And if it's something especially that you can do all the time, like you can do it in the morning when you first wake up, you can do it before you go to bed. There's so many different places that it's really, really difficult to get rid of it. So you've got to start with just a few little spots or where you can avoid it to build that belief in you that you can get rid of it, and just keep focusing on each of them for a period of time. Like, I think if someone, unless you have an emotional impact, so an emotional impact is, for instance, you're a smoker and you find out you've had a heart attack and you're in hospital and you're like, holy crap, I'm so scared right now, I'm never going to smoke again. So that's a really powerful emotion, like fear in that situation. Or you find out that your wife's pregnant and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be a dad who smokes. And there's that strong emotion that really pulls you. But if you don't have that, then it's got to just be small steps. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for, if you get angry at that time, oh, that's it, I'm going to have one. And then it breaks the thing. And with smoking, it's never quitting. That's what I would say. It's like, just keep, like, if you fail, get back on it. Don't make it mean anything. People tend to make, oh, I suck, or I'm this, or I'm that. It's like, no, it's just a really hard habit to break. When you're a little bit kinder to yourself, it's a bit easier.